Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the Lady Walker Show. I am Lady Walker, and we have a great show in store for you. Beloved, thanks a trio for tuning in. My guest is someone of interest. He is the father of a young man who was severely injured back in 2010 in a juvenile, or should I say youth correctional facility. And he also is an advocate amongst various causes, and we're going to find out more about that. So welcome to the show, Michael McIntosh. Greetings and more greetings.
Thank you for having me, Lady.
You are welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, likewise. It's good to sit down, and my main thing is to sup a little tea, so to speak, with you. Now, you have an interesting story, but before we get into what happened to your son and how you end up becoming an advocate for various causes, let's just talk about just a little bit about who is Michael McIntosh.
Oh, wow. I hear this question so much. Yeah, I hear this question so much. I'm so used to talking about my son. Yeah. I almost forget who I am. But,
wow.
I'm just, I feel like I always look at myself as being the average father who just cares about his kids, cares about life. I've been an educated person. I've been in the military. I have a master's degree in environmental science. You know, I work for the state right now as an operator trainer, and I pretty much like doing the job that I'm doing, but I also enjoy giving a hand and helping out wherever I can.
Okay, now going back to you got a degree in environmental
science.
Did you go into that?
Yes, I'm doing environmental science right now as we speak. I'm an operator trainer, and what I do is help people get certified and trained in wastewater treatment facilities.
Interesting.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Most people like to just get away from it, but actually there's a very, very big science that goes along with treating waste and water and things like that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you're going to talk about what happened to your son back in 2010. And his name is
Michael McIntosh,
okay.
Just like mine, right? He was wound up going through, and he was accused, and then they said he confessed. I don't know what happened. They said he confessed to something that he was accused of without any evidence, and about time I got involved into the picture where they were actually willing to share some information. They already had him. So
he was at what age?
17, about to turn 18.
Okay.
Right. So once they had him, you know, you as a parent, you feel like you're behind the 8 ball, because then the system doesn't like to share information. So you have to go about it the best way you can, trying to figure out which information you can trust, you know. But as long as they have you a step or two behind them, they're always winning. So he wound up being placed at the Walnut Grove Youth Correctional Facility. And I never forget, it was in February of 2010. I went to go visit him, and they said he was no longer there. And that didn't strike a good chord with me. What do you mean, no way here? Did you transfer him somewhere?
I mean, did they not get in touch with you if he was no longer there?
No, actually, they just said he's no longer there. But the part that got me upset was no one was alarmed about it. So I'm like, well, where is he at if he's no longer here? And the answer was, we don't know. So I talked to everyone there, the chief guard, everyone, and it was like, well, he's no longer here. We don't know where he's at.
That is scary to hear that.
So I said, if he had escaped, you would have plastered his name,
It
social security number,
exactly.
shoe size on every media, you know, radio, everything. We would have been looking for him. But no one seems to be looking for him. No one seems to care, and they're not alarmed about it. So they pointed me in the direction of Mississippi Department of Corrections. I called them, and once again, I met with the same thing. Well, we don't know where he's at. We can't tell you. His last residence was Walnut Grove Youth Correctional Facility. You got to talk to them. And I'm like, well, I did. They told me to call you. But no one seems to be in alarm about it. So I went back and forth between the 2 facilities for almost 3 weeks. No one would give me an answer, all the way up to the warden. You know, it took the warden 3 days.
So it's just like, who do you talk to then if no one from these facilities?
It's like he disappeared and no one seems to care. So I get online. One of my friends told me, get online and see where they got him listed as a residence for inmates. So I did that, and it had the status was unknown. So they took his picture down, and then they cleared out anything that you can find out on the internet. So it was basically like he just disappeared, and they didn't too much care about him disappearing.
Really?
Which is nerve-wracking, because now, you know, you're sitting there as a parent and you're like, you had them, now you don't have them, but you really don't care about not having them. which didn't make sense. So they played this game back and forth with me, and no one told me anything. I mean, even when the warden called me back, he was like, I hear you have some concerns. And I'm thinking, you know I have concerns. I've been calling you for 3 days. And he was like, well, we don't know where he's at. You got to ask the Mississippi Department of Correction. I mean, from the warden on down. And then MDOC did absolutely nothing. After a while, I was hit the notion, I was fasting and praying and asking, Lord, what should I do? Because now I'm so upset that I can't find my son that I had the mind to start calling hospitals. And I did. I called every hospital that was around Walnut Grove, 10 miles each direction. And I think I spent the day calling every hospital I can find. And I finally called UMC, and they said he wasn't there. And I went and took a shower trying to think where else I can call. And I said, well, maybe I'm asking the wrong question, So I learned language is a big thing when you're dealing with the system. So I say, well, instead of just looking for my son, tell me what you do with inmates that come there. And then the lady said, oh, well, you can just talk to security about inmates. So I talked to security. I told the gentleman who I was, I said, I'm trying to find my son. His name is Michael McIntosh.
And this was at
UMC. And the guy said, oh, Mr. McIntosh, he's right here.
So you just changed the question around in a different...
I changed the language of what I was asking because I was trying to find my son by his name. And he's not listed by his name. See, once the system has him, he has a number. So you don't have a name anymore. You degrade it to a number. Nobody recognizes the number because only ones in the system understand what the number means. So when I asked, well, what do you do with inmates? Well, the hospital not thinking just a patient anymore. We got a special group that they call inmates, which are the ones who are locked up. So you talk to security about them. And that's how I wind up learning a little bit about the language. So when I asked him about that, the security guard said, oh, he's right here.
And how long from the time when you went to see your son?
That was about 3.5 weeks in. And I asked him, I said, well, what do I have to do to go see him? I want to come see him. He said, you have to be authorized. I was like, well, who can authorize me? He said, well, just call over there, MDOC, and talk to the doctor. I'm like, okay, because you remember now, I didn't spend 3 weeks talking to them. We got nowhere. So I called them the next day, and it was a Thursday, and I said, well, I'm still trying to find my son. Once again, they denied me all the way up, to the head doctor over there. And I said, well, the head doctor isn't in. Who can I leave a message with? And the secretary said, well, you can leave with me. I said, well, my son is at UMC, and I want to be authorized to go see him. And the lady said, hold on. And then she said, I'll call you right back. They called me back the next day. And she called me back, and she said, Mr. McIntosh, we authorize you to go see your son next Wednesday. I said, okay, what time? 1 o'clock. The next Wednesday, I go over there at 1 o'clock, and they looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, I just want to see my son. They're like, your son is not here. Wait a minute. I just talked to them. I just got authorized. What do you mean my son ain't here? And so when they finally looked through the records, they said, well, they moved him Tuesday.
They moved him Tuesday. Well, hold on for right there. We are going to come back and let you pick up on this story.
Okay.
All right, beloved, we will be right back. Welcome back. I am sitting with Mr. Michael McIntosh, whose son was severely injured back in 2010 in a prison route.
Yes, it is, right.
Yeah. So you were saying that you were looking for your son, and eventually you found out that he was in the hospital, and they made an appointment for you to come and visit him on that Wednesday.
Right.
But that Tuesday before that Wednesday, where you were supposed to have visitation, what happened?
They wind up moving him that Tuesday, so I wouldn't be able to talk and see him. So when I asked where was his whereabouts, I'm in the hospital asking his whereabouts. They don't know. No one said where exactly he went. So I went almost another week trying to ask questions in which MDOC was not going to answer them. And they made me know that they weren't going to answer me because they don't know. And after a while, when they figured out it was Mike McIntosh on the phone, nobody wants to accept the phone calls.
So wait, nobody?
Nobody. I used to, when I first started calling, I would talk anywhere between 2 to 6 people. Now I'm barely talking to one, and they're getting off the phone real fast. So they knew who I was. They knew why I was calling, and they were just hiding it as much as they could. So finally, we come to find out that they moved him from UNC, which I thought one of the better hospitals here, because it's a teaching hospital, so you got a lot of attention. And they moved him all the way to Greenwood, LaFleur in Greenwood.
Really?
So they were making sure I wasn't going to find him, So it took me a minute to find him up there. And then I was working with a chaplain up there who finally got me visitation rights to go see him, which took a while, but we finally got that, and I wound up being authorized
So he was
to
in the
go see him.
hospital for quite some time.
Right. When I got authorized and I actually did go see him, it was 6.5 weeks later.
Wow, because he was severely injured.
Oh yeah, he was in critical condition. He had like 3 or 4 operations. Well, the day I went to go see him, and they check you out and you go in, you know, and I didn't know what to expect. And the thing that caught me off guard was it sounded like it was a kid in the room that couldn't talk. And I'm asking him, well, who was that in there with my son? And the MDOC guard said nothing. You know, everybody was like, oh boy. They got quiet because they was like, he really doesn't know. And I'm looking at them like, I'm missing something because everybody had this crazy look on their face. So when I finally got in and go to the room and I said, Mike, and he was like, Dad, but he couldn't hardly talk. And I said, I'm right here, son. I was standing at the foot of the bed and the nurse was trying to get my attention. And my son was reaching out because he couldn't see me. And I'm at the foot of his bed. So right about that, when I noticed that, my blood pressure probably shot up way over the top. And when I was going to give him a hug, the nurse was still getting my attention, was like, you can't handle him, which made me nervous because, you know, he's got cuts on his face, you know, his eyes are bloodshot red, you know, he can't use his right leg, can't use his right arm, and he is scared to death. And I'm trying to figure out, wow, what's wrong with him? So I give him a hug, and he started crying, and it brought tears to my eyes because, you know, my son went in, he was 100% good, and now we got these problems, and I want to know. The first thing came to my mind, what happened to him? You know, so I asked the nurse. She kept saying, don't handle him. So I couldn't give him a hug. You know, he's got a knot on the back of his head like a baseball. And just, I keep asking her, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with her? And she said, well, I'm not authorized to answer the question, but I get the head nurse. So she goes to get the head nurse. I asked the head nurse the same question. She almost cussed me out and walked out the door. Well, the room got quiet. So when I went to go ask her again, she called security. The hospital security came up there. She told them I was trying to jump on her, you know, which everybody going, well, when did that happen? You know, even the other nurses there saw me ask the question. I'm on the right side of the counter. I asked her the question, very calm, cool, and collective. And she just went off on me. And they were like, oh, wow, what happened, you know? So by the time we got through trying to iron it out, it was actually the Mississippi Department of Correction guards that said, he didn't do anything wrong. He's just here to see his son. And the lady treated him wrong. So they had to get Greenwood, the Florida police, and he escorted me back in the room, you know, and now I only got like 5 minutes to see my son.
Only 5 minutes?
I had a 2-hour window, and they spent 2 hours not letting me back in, trying to clear up the mess with the head nurse.
Oh my goodness.
So the next day I called MDOC, I told them everything that happened. I said, I want to see my son again. They was like, well, the next time you see him, it's wherever he's going to be to finish out his term. We did you a favor, you won't get it again. And that was their direct words to me.
What?
And they did not lie, because it took me another 5 weeks after that to see him again. And it's, I mean, they put him up in parchment, they hid him, you know, he was up there, and they was like, you know, he just got to live his time out through here. But I was like, why he don't go back to Walnut Grove? At the time, he's not old enough to be at Parchment. Well, Walnut Grove said, well, he's not coming back here. And Parchment just kept him up there. So, you know, I had to spend all my time going back and forth with that, you know, but you know, that's just the way some of them things happen, you know, but they will sweep it under the rug as fast as possible.
So that is so sad because you got so many people who probably have encountered something similar to what you have encountered and just probably have given up.
Yeah.
Because they don't know who to get in touch with, and since the people are going to be somewhat challenging, you know, to penetrate their thick skulls, you know, whatever,
Right.
It's challenging. You don't want to give up on your loved one when they are behind bars.
Right, and you know, I started sharing my story, and a lot of people started talking, and the more we talk, the more we started realizing the people who we reaching out to and talking to, everybody started sharing their stories, and we started realizing a lot of kids were being hurt up here, you know, done completely wrong, and horrific conditions, you know, solitary confinement for 30 days because they said
Walnut
something
Grove
wrong.
is like outside of Jackson.
Right, it's just north of Forest, right off 35 in Walnut
and the
Grove.
houses were from age what, 13 on up to
It was supposed to have
22
been
or
from.
what?
It started off being a youth facility, but they didn't bring enough bodies in the bed, so they kept
Okay.
upping it a little bit at a time until they got it all the way up to, I think it's 24, and it was everywhere from 13 to 24. Well, if you got young 13-year-olds going into the same facility as adult, they become a prey to the ones who already been there and know the system. So how do you stop
And
that?
this is Walnut Grove a private prison?
It is, yeah, it's managed by a private prison. I think they're on their third group that's actually managing it, but you know, but private prison just means more money coming to it. You know,
So,
if it was
I
if
mean-
it was state ran, they wouldn't make as much money as they did being private. So now private almost like triples the amount of money you bring in per inmate. So you can see why they're going private.
Right.
Right, because that's more
Bringing
money.
in more money.
And it's
More money,
already
more
it's already a
bodies,
racket
okay?
anyway, because anything you got anyone locked up in any facility, you go pay through the nose trying to do the basic necessities. You know, you can go to the average store and buy like ramen noodles is one of the big things. We like they normally cost anywhere between 20 and 25 cents. Oh, not behind bars, they're $1.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so we making money. You know, a normal t-shirt costs you what, $6 or $8 if you buy it off the commissary. You can buy a pack of 4 for $6.
Now, I read somewhere where, I don't know if it was in Walnut Grove, the mayor at that time, had like vending machine business inside the prison.
Nah, his wife.
Okay.
That was, I think it was either the mayor or the warden, but they can't have it because they know that's a conflict of interest. But the wife had it. Nah, the only way to buy stuff out of there for every visitation is all through vending machines. So who's making money?
Exactly.
They got a police
so that's
department
a business
now.
within a business,
They got
right?
a police department now in Walnut Grove that they didn't have before. But once they got to prison, oh, guess what? We got a little money.
So
to
the
do this.
revenues with having the prison, they're able to hire.
Absolutely. Now they ain't paying the guards nothing, so you got to remember you taking guards that don't have much training at all. You know, they ain't got a big time degree at doing anything. So you taking these people, you're paying them what, $8, $9, $10 an hour. It's only a matter of time before you giving them power over inmate, before that ruins them as well. They're not making money. You know, I just think about it. You take any prison out there we've been talking about in Mississippi. And every time you turn around, they got the wall of shame at every prison, how the guards and tried to smuggle this in or allow this, allow that. It's a wall of shame. Why? Because they're breaking the rules that they're supposed to be enforcing.
We are going to take a break and come back and hear a little bit more about how you became an advocate for various causes. And I don't know if it was all related to what happened to your son.
Yes, it was.
All
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Beloved, we'll be right back. Welcome back, beloved. My guest is Michael McIntosh. He advocates on behalf of various causes. Okay, now, and what happened to your son, of course, this became a leadway, sort of opened a pathway for you to start advocating for various causes.
Well, my son was injured in that riot. He was in critical condition. He has a head injury. You know, he can't remember anything that happened from that day. Like I said, he couldn't use his right arm, his right leg. We have rehabilitated that almost back to 100%, you know. And we're still working with him. He's still got ways to go.
So is he out of prison
Yes,
now?
he's out of prison. He's been in school and enjoying it, you know, and it's a little struggle, but he's still fighting to get through it, you know. So we have been working on that together. And because of the way, I think what put me in the spotlight and kept going was I was willing to talk about it for one. You know, we have the Friends and Families of Youth Incarcerated at Walnut Grove, and it was just a group that got together, a bunch of parents who had kids suffering at this facility, and we decided to speak out against the system, you know, and we had a pretty good number, and it kept growing. And one of the things that I liked about it was my son was not the only one hurt, which is not what I liked. I liked because the people were willing to share it at first. Let's let them know, because if it's out of sight, out of mind, and the media doesn't cover it, you know, you don't get enough
That is so
exposure.
true. And the media may not cover everything that it needs to cover.
Right, you know, they love the big juicy stories. So the only thing that made our story was juicy was we was willing to talk about it. We was like, it needs exposure. This will keep happening as long as we keep letting them shut the door.
Right.
And that was one of the things that I decided not to do. Don't just shut the door. And I kept saying, if you hear, stop worrying about the big R word, which is retaliation. You're here because your loved one is getting hurt. What's retaliation? The same thing. Go get hurt again? You're here because they're getting hurt. If you don't expose that, they'll keep winning.
Because at what you said, they are getting hurt. Rape is taking place in some of the
a whole lot of
facilities,
things is happening
you know,
there.
and
Every time you turn
violence.
around, it's stabbings. You know, you can always look at Walnut Grove and you see how many riots in the head in the last 3 years. You know, because these things are going to continue to happen. Expose them. Only when you expose them, let them know this is a problem, we need to work on it, or get somebody else in there.
Right.
And that's what I started doing. So I'll never forget a radio station that called me. It was out of Washington, D.C., and they heard of my story. More so than my son getting hurt, which I kept telling them, that's not the big issue. I think they were more concerned with what happened against the system, because that shedded a whole lot of light, you know. And I told them, I said, I don't mind talking about it. And the more I talked about it, the more I started realizing I had a target on me. I had the target on my back, my forehead. I would go see my son because I kept speaking out, and they would see me. I go to the prison. They was like, well, he don't have visitation today. And I'm like,
really?
okay, yeah, I just drove 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and you telling me don't have visitation? No. And they will wait for me to react. And I was like, okay. And I wait for my son to call me. I was like, son, this is just one of the games to go play. They didn't allow me to see you today. I'll be there the next time. And and we had a lot of those situations, and we just kept fighting through it. I say, don't give up on me. I'm not giving up on you, And after a while, I think the Campaign for Youth Justice got in contact with me out of Washington, D.C., and they liked that I was willing to expose some things. They was like, it's just not happening in Mississippi. It's happening all over. I met advocates in Houston, Texas, Louisiana. I met them in Illinois, Wisconsin, St. Louis, and we started meeting all over. And the more I got a chance to expose this, the bigger we started seeing how bad the situation really is. So we started wanting the legislators to do something. You guys need to start changing stuff because they didn't know. So we got many opportunities to go out to Washington, D.C., in the Capitol and sit there with all those lawyers or the legislators and senators and tell our side. I did all those panels, and I learned that because it's such a world apart between elected officials and reality, that they after a while didn't really want to hear it, because if they were there and they had to hear it, you're going to hold their feet to the fire to do something. Mm-hmm. And that's where I kept the torch going. I got into arguments. I got escorted out of buildings. I got singled out because I was still willing to say what needed to be said.
Wow.
And you get a lot of folks that get out there and they start looking at who you're talking to and their position. Didn't mean a hill of beans to me. Either you go do something, or if you're not going to do something, I'll let the people know you're not going to do anything. And that's where a big conflict came in. It wasn't so much that I was just telling the truth, but you just telling it to everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted. So every chance the media was out there with us, I was like, sure, I want to sign the waiver, because I want to go on record saying, look, I shook hands with this person and we talked about this. We spent these 2 hours talking about this, and this is what they said they was going to do. So they was trying their best to wiggle out of it. The same thing was here. I got on record going down to Mississippi Department of Corrections, to Chris Epps' office, and he never meet with me. I said, it's really amazing. I'm only one person, but yet you won't meet with me. But he knew I was in charge of the group. Okay. So they love to keep you individualized. If I can just get you down to where it only seems like one person complain and this person complain, then I can pretty much skew it the way I want and look like the problem's been taken care of. Mm-hmm. But when it's a group with all the same issue, we wrote them all down. These are our problems. This is what we want to address. Well, they wasn't willing to do that, So I was like, well, let's just keep pushing. Either they're going to change things, or they're going to look so bad trying to hide it that we're not going to let them get away and we'll hold their feet to the fire. And that was the only thing pretty much got it changed. We got the lawsuit. We won the lawsuit,
Did you?
Yes, we did. And then it was a federal lawsuit talking about these inhumane and barbaric conditions over there at this facility, and they had to do something about it. Then they agreed about it. The part that got me was they agreed about it. They asked for a certain amount of time so they can fix the problems. And then when that time came up, they was like, well, we want to get out the decree. But you didn't fix the problems.
Didn't fix the problem.
They didn't fix the problem, but they wanted to be let free of the decree because why? It might cost them. I'm like, well, you cost them kids their lives. Don't keep making money and building up everything you have off these kids' lives, and all you're doing is taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I guess it's to keep the kids in long term. I'm pretty sure there were nonviolent, nonviolent.
Yeah, nonviolent offenders, yeah.
Yeah, and they may be in there for years.
Mm-hmm. I never forget, I talked to a couple of kids that got hurt from over there, and I never forget the one that was at Walnut Grove 6 months after his release date. 6 months. And I was like, why is he still there if he got released? They said, well, they couldn't have a home address for him. So when he get out, he gonna be on probation. So since he didn't have the home address, it's not listed, and they're still investigating it, they didn't let him out.
Oh, they didn't?
They didn't.
If
so
they
he was still
body,
there.
That's more money, right?
Loans, they have a body in the bed, they're making money.
Isn't that sad?
Well, that's just the way the
what
system is set
about,
up.
are they rehabilitating
Don't say that word.
the inmates now?
Don't say that
Don't
word.
say that word?
Nah.
That's not a good word when it comes
Rehabilitate, I was yet to find out what that really means.
What it means?
Because the system is not rehabilitating you.
Oh, okay.
They have nothing set up when you get out. Everything is counting against you. The system is designed to keep bringing you back. What rehabilitation are they doing? They can have the kids. We fought for medical. We fought for education, we fought for security. When is rehabilitation gonna come in? Well, that was so far down on the totem pole, it never made it.
Really?
So it never happens.
Wow.
It never happens. It's all about money. As long as they got money coming in, they will love it if you just shut your mouth and keep on going.
But you know what? It's good to have somebody who is not afraid and will stand up and fight for what is fair and what is right.
That's why.
Because otherwise, those who are incarcerated, they can't do it really for themselves. Maybe some can. You know, they do it from where they are and send it out, send letters and stuff out. But you need someone on the outside who's going to also help you out.
And you know, I think the notion of what they think is gonna happen, it's always counting against them. You know, I never forget when I was trying to learn the system, I got up one day and I took a day off work and I went and sat in court just to see what was gonna happen. I watched 25 cases, and out of 25, 6 got delayed, but the 19 went like an assembly line. They lined them all up, 3 rows, and they say, okay, you pleading guilty or not guilty. And if they pleaded guilty, then they just gave me a sentence, okay, it was like an assembly line. But the ones that didn't that happen to, it was 6 of them, both white and black, and they had someone come to court. And because they had someone in court, it was a mother, I was the only father there, it was always a mother or a sister, or auntie and a grandmother. You know, both white and black. And then the system was willing to work with them, which I was like, wait a minute, that makes sense. You know, you're not just railroading these kids, you know, you pleaded guilty, you get 5 years. They were saying, okay, what can we do to either keep you out the system or make you better? Which I thought, why not do that all the time? That's why I started advocating, because we don't get these opportunities because the lack of knowledge keeps us at bay. You know, somebody get arrested, oh, I must have did this, you know, they go get 5 years. I'm like, no, that ain't the way it works. And I tell kids and I tell parents, go to court with them. If something happened, it's just an allegation. Go to court with them, right? And never plead out. I always tell them, don't plead out. You plead out, they don't have to do their job because they got a piece of paper saying, yeah, I did it. And whether you're guilty or not, if you admit to it, they don't have to do no work. When you say you guilty, they send you an hour. You say you're not guilty, they might have to hold you in jail or give you bond, because why? Now they have to work it and prove it. Isn't that what the system's supposed to do in the first place? And that's the part that used to make me upset. I say, don't let them plead. Don't let them plead.
Don't let them plead.
Because, you know, pleading is bad. Now, if you know you did it, and I mean, you know you went in there totally guilty and you got caught, well, maybe pleading might help you. It might give you a lesser sentence. But when it's just an allegation and the kid or whoever's saying they did not do it, don't plead it out. Don't plead it out. Let them prove it. And I think with proof, then we can't deny it.
Right.
You know, I talked to quite a few of the inmates. I was like, well, if you did it, they understand. He said, man, you know, Mr. McIntosh, I'm here because I did do it. Okay. But what about the ones who didn't? And I had a bunch of them say, I did not do what they say. Okay, but because they plead you, you know, you plead it out, and they isolate you. They want you individualized. Like I said, they'll put you in solitary confinement for months. I've seen them do it for a month just to the person
and
confess.
that'll weaken some people.
When you sitting in a room in a closet in the dark by yourself, 24 hours a day, time 24 to 30 days, yeah, it's gonna wear you out. And okay, if they say I only gotta get 2 years, I'm doing it just to get out. And that's the mentality that I face a lot of.
All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming out. Very knowledgeable, educational to me, and I'm pretty sure to you, the audience. Thanks, Atria.
Thank you very much for having
me. In the
me.
meantime, beloved, thanks, Atria, for tuning in, and we will see you next time on The Lady Walker Show. Bye-bye.